Theme song for the Gear Podcast. Welcome to the Gear Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Troy Napperbarn.
Now, I'm Leon Todd, and I have to say that that's my first time, like everybody else, hearing that theme song. And Troy, I got to say, I really love the way you captured the live vibe of that one on the recording. How many takes did you have to do for that?
Oh, mate, they call me the one-hit wonder for a reason.
You gone
done. Not because I'm good at baseball.
Not because you're good at baseball, because you're an absolute gun at centre half forward.
Yeah, well, I just remembered as I was about to start that I said there'd be a theme song, but I forgot all about it. So during the week, so I figured I have to improvise.
That wasn't the theme song.
Not pre-recorded, just off the cuff. I think we all get the picture. But better than nothing.
I love it, mate. How was your week?
My week was all right. I had a little visit from an old friend on Wednesday. He came by, got a coffee, and then just walked around my studio with a video camera for a little while. That was pretty cool.
I saw the video online. That was a pretty good one.
I've read through the comments, so that was nice.
Yeah, were there any comments we wanted to highlight or anything on Instagram? Any shout outs we want to give people?
I don't think we got anything on Insta this week, to be honest with you. I was about to say I'm going to find the video and see if there's any more comments, but I don't think that. I think it was just people loving it, just frothing it, mate. Just can't get enough of the Gear Pod.
Yeah, exactly. And if you cannot get enough of the Gear Pod, be sure to check out some of the numerous recordings that myself and Troy have made under various titles. The best way, of course, is to go and buy some Ragdoll merchandise or CDs from our Bandcamp, because, it's product straight up. But otherwise, you can go to one of Troy's gigs.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you say our Bandcamp,
buy him a lemonade.
That doesn't include, that's not my Bandcamp, that's Leon's Bandcamp. You can just give me cash. That's fine. Just come to Perth, Western Australia, put a couple of buckaroos in my guitar case.
Put a pineapple in the guitar case and you're sweet.
Yep.
You'll play Sweet Home Alabama for $50, won't you?
Then Sweet Child of Mine, and then Sweet Dreams Are Made of These, and just all the sweets, the candy box.
I feel like the people of the Gear Podcast should be let into this little story. I'll let them wet their whistle with this one. We used to play in Kalgoorlie fairly regularly, which, for anyone unfamiliar with Western Australia, if you imagine what, like 80s movies about Australia and what they thought the outback looked like, and there's always this town, that's basically what Kalgoorlie actually is. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's a lot of red dirt. There's a few pubs. And there was a guy who used to come to our gigs there called Cole. And Cole was a pretty sweet guy, but when he got on it, he got on it. And this one gig we're playing, Cole's standing right at the front of the stage, and in between every song, he's just screaming, "Sweets, play sweets, play sweets." And we're like, "Sweet Home Alabama, here you go, Cole." He's like, "No, mate, sweets. Sweet Child of Mine, here you go, Cole." No, sweets. Finally, in the set break, we're going, "Cole, what is sweets?" He goes, "That's just what I call Here I Go Again."
How could you not know that?
That was our reaction. Like, why would you call Here I Go Again sweets? He thought, I just thought that sounded like a good name for it. So
David Coverdale, it's not too late.
David Coverdale, it's not too late, mate. You can still change the name. So shout out to Cole if he's listening. I was thinking about that guy the other day and I kind of miss him. He was a lovely man, and his great-grandfather, the Carnaby's cockatoo, is named after him. So,
well, there you go.
There you go. Carnaby's cockatoo is named after his great-granddad, and Whitesnake Sweets is named after him.
He wasn't Cambong, was he?
Nah, no, that was a different guy. We'll leave that one for next week's podcast so I can fully recount the saga of madness that went along with that. So anyway, there's my new segment, which is called Things People Say at Gigs.
Stories from the past. Can we just quickly address a couple of things, actually? The comments on that YouTube video.
Those comments. So
there's not too much there.
That's why there's the other sweets. Yeah. I'm an idiot.
I think it was people loving it. I'd love to see the podcast in video format on YouTube. We might get to that at some point. We are looking at each other right now, so if we can be bothered to screen cap it, then bing, bang, boom.
I think what I will do is I will take the audio podcast we have done and I'll just put in really flattering photos of us and upload them to my YouTube, because there's actually a podcast upload subsection on YouTube now. So anyone who wants to hear it on YouTube, I will put them up and you can listen to it there. I'll try and get that done this week.
That's a bloody ripping idea, mate. Ripper-dipper. That was from Saran Ooh, I can't. I'm gonna butcher this name. Saranganarayan. That's like when someone reads my surname Nababan and
Yeah,
butchers it. So
exactly.
sorry about that. A couple of comments about the stiletto. So Paul Lembo says the stiletto was designed to complement the recto in a two guitar mix. Unsurprisingly, it does this really well. That's why neither a recto nor why it's neither a recto nor a Marshall clone. Which I believe we've tried that before, haven't we? Trying to get
I can believe that.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because like even I watched the video back and the end section where you sort of play through those amps for a little bit, the like sometimes when I hear that stiletto, it doesn't sound that martially to me. In that video, it kind of did sound martially. It's just weird. Like I don't get the same sensation as I'm recording it sometimes, but maybe with the video on there and stuff, it was a bit more deceiving or something. I don't know. Weird. So that was cool. But yeah, I think I reckon we tried that on Rust, didn't we? Wasn't that stiletto and recto?
Mate, I actually cannot remember. I know there's definitely recto on there. I can't remember what the other thing was. If it was,
It might
I
have
would be
been.
surprised if it was stiletto.
Do you know what the other song that we can I say any of the working titles for those songs?
Oh, of course, mate.
When
all the working titles are pretty funny, so no one's going to know.
Yeah,
what
what's the song? The World You Gave Us from the album, the Back to Zero album. The working title of that was Nut Meat.
Yep, because I believe we played a gig for New Year's up in Shark Bay, and we were perusing the selection they had at IGA, and there was just a thing in there labeled Nut Meat, and we thought, how fun is this? That's a perfect name for a song.
Well, the second after we did Rust, because we did 2 songs at a time. This is about 5 years ago, Uncle Leon.
This is 500,000 years ago.
Yeah, so we did
before humans.
We did Rust.
Fully human.
Yeah, well, Rust ended up being the working title and stayed with the name of the song. But the second song we did in that same group of songs was Meet the Meat, I believe.
Yes.
So MEET, the MEAT. And I think maybe it was on that song that there was a stiletto recto combo. I think we used recto for both of those 2 songs. One had Splawn and one had stiletto, but I don't remember which one's which. So anyway, it's a good combo. I like it. It doesn't work for everything. I'm actually not doing a quad track thing anymore or on many projects. I'm getting a bit over it. I'm sort of liking 2 different amps pan left and right personally. So maybe I should just do that with recto and stiletto on the next project and see what that sounds like.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to hear. I mean, that kind of stuff's really easy to overthink. Like, but the low end response, like, nah, it's just going to sound wide, bro. Like, do it. People have been doing that for a long time. There's a reason it works.
I feel like the problem is with rectos, like depending on the genre of music it is, there's like a threshold whereby the recto is completely appropriate. Depend on the genre. And if you're just a little bit not heavy enough for that, it sticks out too much. Like it's got a little too much fizz. It's a little too crusty. Oh, not crusty. That's the wrong way of saying it. But I feel like I straddle that line with the music I work on, where it's like I have people. Sometimes I put up like the. I'm trying to think. Well, maybe in the stiletto and the Marshall, and I get like a good amount of gain, and they're just like, "No, it's too much. Like turn the gain down. I'm like, all right.
Yeah,
it depends.
I can sympathize with that, where it's like it's not going to be perfect for everybody, but in the cases it is, if you actually play real music, then it's always perfect. I saw a great video today, which was Uger Valaverta from YouTube, who I've spoken about before. He's like the older brother I never had, and he is playing. I think he's doing a demo of the Zach Wild 800 model.
Oh yeah,
and he does this bit at the end where he's like, "What you under?" I'm paraphrasing here, but it's basically like, they're unforgiving amps, but it will command you. You just have to command it. So like, basically, just play guitar properly, and it's a good amp.
Yeah.
And he kind of laughs and he's like, "Yeah, I'm joking." I'm like, "Yeah, but you're also telling the truth."
There are amps like that. Unfortunately, you really have to play to them. I don't know how I feel about those amps because I do enjoy the process. You know what? In the studio, if I'm playing it, then I'm completely cool with it. When I'm at a gig and I'm trying to make those amps work for me, I'm always like, oh fuck, I can't do all these things at once. If I'm trying to sing and then get the amp to work for me, I find that a little bit difficult. And it's also hard
it's
with
got to be a you're just playing guitar situation. Hey,
yeah. And then there's things with certain guitar players that I record where the gauge of pick is one really funny one where it's either way too heavy or way too light. And sometimes it's like the actual attack on the strings is way too light. It's funnily enough, I have that being more of an issue than people attacking too heavy. But like sometimes that's the key to the guitar sound, just like the way that you're hitting the strings. But I guess my point is like when you give people certain amps to play through, even though in your head it's the perfect sound, it just doesn't work with the attack. And it falls in a heap.
It's pretty interesting. Hey, yeah, it's the what like, and a lot of it has to do surely is like, you know, transient response, like, you know, a rectifier, the way the low end like kind of, I don't know, it has this like bloom to it, for use of a better term, whereas like a Mark Series amp doesn't do that. It's very direct.
Yeah.
You know,
and that bloom, like you can control that. If you're aware of how your right hand works, you can get that to do stuff for you. But if you're not conscious of it, if you're used to playing a certain type of Marshall amp or just like a lot of distortion without that amount of bottom, it's like tough. It's tough to do instantaneously. It doesn't. Yeah. It's not going to take you like a year to learn, but yeah, it might take you just a couple goes. But you know, we're all conscious of time and stuff. It's bloody pain.
There's another question or comment that I saw on that video about the Daking mic preamps. What are you using those for?
I literally just read that. In fact, I'm going to read the comment to myself. Love seeing the Daking mic amps, incredibly underrated. No longer in production in 500 series. Used to use a Daking 4 in a studio I worked in, and the BA 312s were the best guitar pre's I've ever used, but preferred the 512s.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I completely agree with that. To answer your question, what am I using the Daking mic preamps on? So yeah, I guess you kind of saw them in the rack. For those of you, if you want to go check out the video, or if people may not give a shit, but I have a 500 series rack. It's a JLM 11 500 series rack in my rack of stuff. I have two Avitas MA5 preamps. I've got one JLM TG 500 mic preamp, two of the Dakings mic preamps, and then 6 of the classic API VP26s. So the VP26s are basically API style mic pre's, but they come in kits, so you can throw them. If you can use a soldering iron and follow instructions, you can make them yourself, and that's what I did. So as it turns out, there's what's that 4 different styles of mic pre's in that rack, as well as the Audient mic pre's, which also sound good, but I use them less. The Dakings, I actually shot everything out maybe 2 years ago. I preferred the MA5s. I think on guitars, they're my favorite. The MA5s and the JLM TG500, they're my preferred ones. I find that if I drive the mic preamps harder, like into distortion, I think I've actually showed this to you.
Yeah.
And I can do it. Interesting. Yeah, of the three of the 4 mic pre's I have, and the Daking isn't one of these, but the other 3 flavors that I've got in the rack, they have an input gain and then an output attenuator, like pot on the back on the end of it. So what you can do is like you can create distortion by just driving the shit out of the mic preamp, backing off the output, and then so you're not like clipping your converters and whatever as you run into Pro Tools or whatever. I find that if I drive the shit out of the MA5, it has a really pleasant sort of distortion and a real like hardness and edge and attack to the sound that I don't get when I run it cleaner. So it's one of those things that doesn't necessarily work for everything, but it's just that kind of that extra in your face saturated. I don't know if it's a transformer thing or whatever, but it gives me a relatively pleasant sound. And that's like nothing new. That mic pre is based off the Neve 1073 thing, apparently, which I've done that with Neves before as well, where you get like this certain point of saturation. So in terms of like clean, pristine audio, it's not really what you want, but in terms of giving vibe and character to a sound, it's absolutely what you want. I find that those sound the best. The TG500 also sounds really good, and it's got an impedance control on it as well, so you can change the flavor of it a little bit.
That's pretty cool.
Find the on guitars, I don't really love the Dakings as much. They're a little brighter, and that they have this sort of, at least to me, they had like almost like a tiny little quackiness about it. compared to the others, which probably in isolation it's easy to deal with. Like maybe if you just EQ'd the amp a tiny bit differently, or you put the mic in a slightly different position, you get away with it. But like lined up, like all these ones lined up, that was probably my least favorite. The classic API ones, I actually don't love them. I think they sound good. They sound fine. But I prefer the MA5s a bit more. They also sounded a little bit more, they didn't quite have the same sort of like body for whatever reason. But there's also a possibility that I just built them wrong. That's absolutely the truth. And I did actually notice
that's also on the table.
Yeah, and the thing is, like with kits, my soldering and my electronics expertise is limited. Like I said, I can follow instructions and I put stuff together and it's been able to work, and I've used it like in my recording for a really long time now. But like I think channel 1 of the first classic API in the rack there, I noticed it actually has a bit of like weird distortion, even though it's not clipping. It has a little bit of distortion in it, of which I thought it sounds like something is clipping along the chain. I swapped them to a different mic pre and that was gone. So there's clearly a bit of something going on in that one. So
just a little bit of how's it going.
Yeah, so you never know, but it's still having the output controller on it is really useful, so you can still drive it into saturation if you like. I think actually on those guitars we recorded last week, they were driven a little bit through the mic pre.
Yeah, right.
Not to the huge point of distortion, but a little bit. And if you have this capability in your own equipment, like where you can drive the front end a little bit harder and back off the volume so you don't clip, it's worth the experiment. Like I did it with the MA5s because they all have it's 10. What is it? 5? Yeah, 5 dB input. Like clicks on the input.
Yeah. That's
so
right.
I actually did it 5 dB at a time, backed the output gain off, and ran the same piece of audio through, so I could actually hear what it sounded like with an extra 5 dB of saturation. And there is a point when, like, if you really crank it to full, it fuzzes out in a kind of cool way, sort of like I guess what that JHS Neve pedal thing that he does.
Yeah, or the Hudson Broadcast or something. It's like
it's in that same sort of
distortion.
Exactly, it's in that same sort of level of thing. What's that last not King's Triple X? What's it called? What's the song? What's the
Follow the Leader?
Follow the Leader. So the last Ragdoll song that came out, which working title, it was King's Triple X. You can work out
to differentiate it from a different song, which is called King 69.
Yeah,
so we are all fully grown adults. Right here.
But that song, when I mixed it, I was experimenting a little bit with this transformer saturation thing. So they weren't in the rack, but I've got this pair of Purple Audio compressors, the Purple Audio Action compressor, and you can run it.
Those.
Yeah, you can run it so that, because it has I think it's got a transformer on the output or something. But you don't have to run it as a compressor. You can run it just for the transformers and drive those into distortion. So the main rhythm tracks on that song were ran through the Purple Actions, like driven really, really hard, and then run back into Pro Tools. Like that's how I use them in terms of outboards. So I actually found it. I hate to say this word. It sort of warmed up the tone of those guitars a little bit. I've got other ways of doing that now, but at the time it really gave the sort of missing character to what those guitar sounds were. And I really liked it. So yeah, I mean, who knows if it, I literally did it that one time, and then COVID hit, and then I kind of got distracted with other things, but yeah, it's a cool thing. If you got the capability to try it, it's definitely worth it, I suppose, is the takeaway.
It's certainly like a bit of a missing link thing sometimes, where, I've run into this, when was that? So I'm just gonna like name drop one of my favorite guitar players who flicked me a message on Instagram once.
Machine Gun Kelly.
Machine Gun Kelly. No, Machine Gun Loomis. Jeff Loomis. And I saw this message from Jeff Loomis. I'm like, why is Jeff Loomis messaging me? And we were talking about the band Loudness.
That's fucking sick.
A big fan. And, the song Crazy Nights.
Yep.
That tone at the start, he was like, I've got an Axe FX. What should I do to get that? So I was like, I just kind of sat here for a little bit, and I mess around with a bunch of stuff, and I kind of went A/B with it. And I felt like I got it pretty close, and I was like, there's just something else happening in that sound. Listening to the isolated intro on loop, and the cab block in the axe lets you have like tape saturation or transformer saturation. Can't remember if it was like one of the tape modes or the like Neve style transformer thing, but you kind of put that on, and it was that last little bit that just got you that hair. And it's clearly a really good old Marshall and a really good guitar player who knows their sound, but it's like it's hitting a console of some variety somewhere in the chain. There's just that extra little bit of sauce on there. And yeah, that was kind of the thing. So, I got a really nice message back from Jeff playing an Akira Takasaki star guitar, playing that song.
That's
and
awesome.
It was just like, just nailing it,
Wait, so what amp was it that you used for that?
I think the Atomica High.
Okay.
I think I did a video about it at some point. And Jeff's like a lovely, lovely human being and such a good player. Like, it's just, that they're a good player, but when you see them on like phone audio, just like playing stuff that you don't normally associate with them, like, you're actually very, very good at guitar.
Yeah, there was a period probably around 2006 when he was probably the best guitar player in the world, right? Like that's what everyone accepted.
Yeah, pretty much. What was that album? This Godless Endeavor, the Nevermore album?
Yeah, that was a cool. I really liked that album.
Man,
and was Chris Broderick in the band at that point too?
Chris wasn't in the band. There was a guy called Steve Smythe in the band.
Okay, I thought it was him. My bad.
I know Chris did join Nevermore.
Okay, he did
at some point as a touring guitarist, and
then he joined Megadeth, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's like a terrifying guitar combination. But yeah, 2005, 2006. I was in year 12, so it might have been 2005, and I remember rushing to JB Hi-Fi to buy that album.
Yep.
And
I remember rushing to LimeWire to download that album.
Yep. So if Jeff's listening to this one, Jeff Loomis, we love you. We'd love to have you on the show at some point.
And I did buy that album. I'm sure I have it on CD as well. So
I listened to it not too long ago, and it's really, really good. I'm pretty sure it's Andy Sneap.
Okay, yeah. Well, he was doing all that stuff at that time.
Of course, it crushes. But it was one of those, like, I remember it being sick at the time, and I thought I'd go back and listen to it and be like, oh, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff on here I'm not into, but it still stacks up, man. It's like the song Psalm of Lydia is just...
Oh, that was the one.
That's the coolest heavy metal song of the 2000 to 2010 of the you know what as well? It's pre-Gent, that album.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like technical progressive heavy metal that is not Gent. It's before all of that. And yeah, Jeff was like doing some cool stuff. Just his sound as well, like boosted rectos and 5150s, sort of an OG. I saw the Synergy video he did as well.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Sounded great. Like just, someone who gets it in a big way.
Yep.
In a very, very big way.
I did play the 6505. I think I told you about this, but I've had a little blast with the 6505 module in the last week, which was pretty cool. I threw it up against the 5150 and with my Syn 30 as well, so the Synergy module and the Syn 30, and they sounded pretty good. I probably still prefer the OG, but that's in an back-to-back AB, and I feel like I'm making excuses, which I don't mean to do that, but possibly different power section on that one. There was just that like girth that
the giant chungus that a 120 watt power amp gives you.
This is amp in the room versus a mic'd amp as well. So it was kind of like a bit more a feeling sort of thing. So I should, I've got it there. I'll mic it up during the week and have a little bit of a play. But the tone was definitely there. Like the tone felt really good.
Yeah. That's really, really cool. Speaking of new stuff, did you see anything at the NAMM show that excited you?
Actually, there's two things, I guess, that happened. Two companies, not so much in the guitar sphere, but in pro audio. So the boring one, but that literally made me scream yes at my computer screen. It's like if anyone saw how excited I got about this one thing, it would have been really embarrassing. But Avid has a Thunderbolt option now for the Matrix series.
Oh, the modular thing they're doing?
Well, yeah, so there's a new Matrix interface. The Matrix, the original MTRX interface was like a fully modular thing where you'd have to put cards in it. Do you know how expensive it was for those cards, by the way?
I don't, but
to fully kit one out, it was
I don't think I'm going to be surprised at how ridiculous it is.
You might be, because to fully kit one out, you're talking like 25,000 American dollars.
Wow, American.
I think it was
American
American, I'm pretty
dollary
sure.
dues.
Or maybe it was Australian, but whatever. It was really expensive, which is why the Matrix Studio, which like in Australian dollars was about $8,000, is still like very, maybe $7,000, but whatever. It's still very expensive, but it's a bit more affordable for the rest of us. But
Yeah, commercial studio.
the new version of it has a few, so like the original one, you'd buy the chassis and then put the cards in it, and then the cards were like $3,000-$4,000 each or something. I think the new one has a bunch of stuff built into it already, so you can use it off the shelf. But the really cool thing is that it has Thunderbolt on it, which allows for more expansion of how the units can work in a setup, which is, it sounds really silly, but it's like, Avid has been so locked off with their hardware for so long, where it's like, if you want to get an Avid piece of hardware into Pro Tools, it had to go through a few hoops. Like my Matrix Studio at the moment goes down its own proprietary fucking DigiLink cable into a box which just converts that cable into Thunderbolt, but that box is something like $1,200 Australian to buy.
Yeah.
So in saying that, the Thunderbolt option card for my Matrix, which I think is available, is going to cost me about $1,200 to do. But it's just sort of, it just ties everything in a little bit easier.
It's one less thing to connect.
Yeah, there's a few other features, like because for me to get computer audio into my speakers at the moment, like I have to use Dante Virtual Sound Card, which is kind of a pain in the ass. And there's a few issues with like sample rates changing, where if you change the sample rate for one, or like if I open up a Pro Tool session that's at 44.1 kilohertz, I won't be able to watch YouTube without going and like changing like a whole other piece of software, which it's like, it's not the end of the world to do that, but sometimes it just won't show up or it won't work. And then,
but it's a bit of a song and a dance is what you're saying.
Yeah. And it's like, at the moment I've got a $1,200 piece of external gear to connect all this shit up with limited options. It is kind of worth it to me just to drop in the new thing. Yep. If I was on HDX, it's different. But I'm not on HDX, I'm on HD native, and I don't really need that low latency and all that sort of stuff. So it's not too much of a problem. So that's exciting for me, and probably for a few people, probably not for too many people listening to this, but hey, that was exciting. And
I'm sure we have some audio enthusiasts amongst the Gear Podcast listening base. Make yourselves known. And
the more exciting thing for me, like in a more immediate thing, was some of the updates to SoundFlow, which I did.
Yeah.
I talked about that.
Actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I talked about that a little bit over the last few weeks. I think I demonstrated my little app on the video too, that I can control the amp selector with using that software. But the cool thing is, so Avid over the last like 6 months or something has really opened up access to their software that otherwise previously hasn't really been there, because it's all been pretty well locked off to develop. Or like you couldn't really access like Yukon stuff, as far as I'm aware. Like that was all very proprietary to Avid.
That's right.
So they updated their develop, like some of it goes over my head, so I'll apologize if I get it wrong, but they updated like the developer kit, or made it a bit more like accessible for Joe Blow to get involved with at all. But SoundFlow is now working very closely with Avid, so the partnerships there, like there's a bunch of SoundFlow stuff built into Pro Tools at certain levels of Pro Tools. The new announcements, firstly, you can use, like SoundFlow is going to be able to use the Stream Deck Plus, which came out about five or so months ago. So
is that the one with the knobs?
Yeah, so it's got like 4 knobs on the bottom, 8 buttons on the top, and then like a touch screeny sort of thing.
Like a scribble strip.
Yeah, so that's really cool, because as a plug-in controller, it will be awesome. So I should be able to I should be able to program a few things, like using, say, distressor plugins, and have the knobs automatically pop up. Because the way that SoundFlow works is like you can have, say, like a deck, like a series of buttons programmed on your Stream Deck to work with a specific plugin, but that deck will open up, so all the knobs and buttons on the deck will change as soon as the plugin is like attentioned or open on the screen. So it's just that immediate sort of, all right, I'm going to put a distressor on my snare drum, bam, there it comes up, and then all the controls are ready to go. So that's really cool. And then why this is also really great is that the Stream Deck Plus will now be able to control the DADman software that I use for all my monitor controller stuff, which that if you I use,
it all just sounds like happy days.
it's all happy days, but that's like, so I use an iPad at the moment, which is a little bit dicky and a little bit finicky sometimes with the Dadman software, and that controls like volume up and down, sources for if I'm listening to Pro Tools on my Mac or whatever. But yeah, the Stream Deck Plus will be able to talk directly to that, so I'll have an actual physical knob for volume control, which can be really useful. So it's like, it's very boring, but the actual hardware monitor controller for the Dadman thing is like 2,000 Australian dollars.
Versus what, 400 or 500 for the Stream Deck?
$330 Australian for a Stream Deck, and plus the software, which I already pay for. So it's it's just way better. It'll do more things. And also there's apparently massive wait times on the monitor controller. Like they just aren't making them fast enough. So yeah, here's a $300 solution, which is way better. So those are the main two things. And like I think I've got to wait till May for the SoundFlow stuff to happen. And then as far as the other thing, like that's a medium term purchase. I'll just wait till they drop and pick one up eventually. What about you, Uncle Leon? So anything exciting Guitar Land?
Nothing I really want to run out and buy. I saw, what were a few things?
Well, the first thing I'd like you to talk about to me is the new UA pedals, because I believe you sent me a message with one as I was driving home from the studio after we recorded the podcast last week.
That's right. Yeah. So what have they done? They've got there's a dual compressor, which is pretty cool. And it has, it's basically the UA 610 preamp, and then what was it, 2 or 3 compressor modes, but they're dual, so you can run like LA2A into 1176 and vice versa.
Yeah, I think the 3 compressor modes are 1176, LA2A, and a Dynacomp, if I'm not mistaken.
There you go.
And then
what more do you need out of life? Yeah, sorry, I'm finding this now and bringing it up. So that's called the Max, and they, let's see, Teletronics, LA2A, 1176, and Dynacomp. So yeah, there you go. That one, like the dual compression. So here's the thing, right? For the longest time, I was like, why would you want one compressor, let alone 2? Mate, slide guitar. Yeah. Like, just Lowell George, Little Feat, like wrote the book on how to get that sound. Also, that Sean Lane, like Jonas Hellborg, fretless thing he did? Like, you've seen videos of that. He's got this kind of sound on one of the live clips where it's like, so much sustain, but it's so clean, and 2 compressors. So
there you go.
There you go. This pedal will make you sound like Sean Lane.
Yeah.
Disclaimer, not going to do that.
I'm interested to see how that works in a guitar sense, because I'm really working out how compression works for me in that realm. An LA2A 1176 combo tracking and mixing and stuff, I use that a lot, like particularly for vocals. Usually 1176 first because it's a really fast attack. So for me, the way I use it is that'll get rid of a lot of the main spiky transient parts, and then I'll use the LA2A after that to even the sound out. But on a guitar, I don't know how that translates, or how, I'm sure it's usable, but I can't say, I don't have like a sonic signature in my brain where like, oh, cool, I'm going to get this sound by doing this one thing.
Yeah, I'm going to get that thing. I mean, I think of now the Origin Effects Cali 76.
Yeah, like that's
became a thing.
Yeah. But and the slide rig as well, that's 2 of their 1176 things together, as far as I'm aware.
Correct, right? Yeah. And kind of like an easy way to tweak them so that it works. And that's something that's pretty cool. The main thing with like an 1176, because it's JFET based, is like it distorts at extreme values, and that's kind of why you like it on guitar. It's like it's like what we were talking about earlier with the mic pre's. You get this thing that's not a like op amp based distortion thing. It's just got a cool character, and yeah, the 11, like I've still got that Cali 76. It's a cool pedal for
sounds awesome.
For certain things. If I was doing a gig, what's a vibe is telly into a deluxe reverb. That's a country gig. There you go. You've got the rig.
Well, we did that at your place. Remember, a year ago, like I came around and we had a little blast with that exact setup, and it sounded awesome.
They have back to UA, they have the Galaxy Tape Echo. So it's just their, I'm guessing, Roland RE201 emulation, which sounds pretty good. And I mean, the one that looks particularly interesting to me is the Delverb. It's like seafoam green with brown knobs. So it's a pretty how's it going aesthetic. But it is basically the 3 modes from the, what do they call it? I want to say the Starlight.
Oh, yeah.
Is that their delay pedal?
I think so, yeah.
And then 3 modes from the Golden with sort of like fewer knobs to twist on there. I mean, like the 224 and the Golden's one of the best reverb pedals out there, like despite its kind of shortcomings in terms of like saving presets and the app and a bunch of other stuff I could complain about. But it sounds so good. Like the 224 on it is amazing. It's one of my favorite reverbs. It's just like, it just has a character that you don't get out of the Big Sky, you don't get it out of the Mercury 7, you don't get it out of anything else. It's like they've clearly modeled the internal like 12-bit stuff that's going on.
Well, there's really a UA, there's a 224 plugin that they've done for years, so it's right there.
It's that. They've got the EMT 140 plugin basically ported in there, which sounds great. And the Spring Reverb on there is probably one of the best Spring Reverbs I've heard out of a non-actual Spring Reverb. I don't love Spring Reverb, but it's really, really good. And then on the delay side, the Starlight, like there's an Echoplex and there's a Precision delay, which is a clean delay line. But the Deluxe Memory Man on there, again, sounds so good. And on the Starlight, you've got like an input gain and an output level control, so you can like hit the preamp of it kind of harder. And the I really like on the Golden and on the Starlight, like the way they voice the modulation is just like, it's actually voiced to make music with. It's not one of those things where like, oh yeah, the modulation goes up to 10 hertz on a reverb. It's like, okay, no one actually wants that. It's just kind of there. So both of those in one, I think that's kind of a no-brainer. It's going to be a no-brainer for a lot of people.
I was super excited about those because I was looking for a delay / reverby thing for my board like 3-4 months ago when I was thinking about setting some stuff up. But there wasn't really, like, there's a couple of cheapies like the Nuex Atlantic I thought looked kind of cool.
Yeah, that's actually pretty good, especially for the price.
But then there's other stuff where it's like when you get up there, you may as well just find an Eventide H9 secondhand, or
pretty much.
Or I've got the HX Stomp and all that, but this one seems sort of up my alley. Like it's obviously high end. The sound of it's really good. The features are really good. So I'd probably get a bit more love out of that, I think. But
I saw, I mean, the Starlight and the Golden, they're just really, really good. So it makes sense to have them in one. My main criticism is that there's a bunch of under the hood parameters that are there that you can't tweak. You need the app and you need to select specific presets. It's really dumb, Troy. I actually kind of, the more I think about it, the more I get annoyed by it. And it's also such a universal audio thing to do. Like, we're going to make stuff that sounds really, really great, but we're also going to like build a big wall around this beautiful garden in here, and only our DSP engineers can change it because you guys are idiots. And who would actually want to tweak the modulation rate? It's like, yeah, fair enough. Most guitar players are idiots, but I want to tweak that.
Yeah, Leon's an idiot.
Don't hold it from me, Universal
Don't
Audio.
You know who I am? That's what you should email them right now. Don't you know who I am?
It's a very anti-Leon kind of thing. So that's probably in general a very good thing for guitar players.
Can I just I was teaching yesterday and I went into a big thing about phase. And and it was a really interesting discussion. And then one of my students brought up this really good point about the way the waveform looks, and asking about drawing peaks onto a waveform. Like, why can't you just make something not clip by drawing like a little cap on it, you know? And which is fair enough. But I was kind of like,
welcome to audio synthesis, mate.
Yeah,
that's basically what it is.
I ended up saying, you know what you need to do? You need to look up the Fourier transfer or transform. Is that what it's called? Yeah.
You can call it a transfer, or you can call it a transform.
But I said that word. Transform. Yeah, but like Fourier, is that how you say it?
Yeah, it's. I mean, that's how my dad says it.
Yeah.
That's how I grew up hearing it. But I believe it probably should be pronounced Fourier.
Oh, well, no, I was not going to do that.
Joseph Louis Fourier was the mathematician. But yeah,
Well,
I'm going to stick with Fourier because it's easier to say for me.
Yeah.
As a non-native francophone.
Well, you're eating your croissants.
You're eating your croissant. You're earning your good coin from the mine. You're doing your Fourier transform. So,
well, because
I've just offended the entire nation of France.
Well, so. I was sort of mentioned that because, well, maybe I won't get too technical about this because partly it might embarrass me for my lack of knowledge on this. But I also went on like, who's really smart is my friend Leon. And like, I was just saying to my students how it's like, part of the reason I even got onto this whole phase thing is because the amount of phase shift of an EQ was the thing that was keeping me up at night last week or a few days ago.
We were talking about this last week with those minuscule surgical cuts.
Absolutely. I was using Plugin Doctor to test some stuff, and that's a story for another time. But then I was mentioning you and about how, you go through these similar things too, where like we'll have a chat and we're talking all of a sudden it's like, yeah, the Fourier transform, that's why this and this and this, and we'll, that I think that was a discussion that we had maybe 3 years ago, when that was the thing, that was the obsession of the week.
Yep, that was the obsession of the week. I think because I wanted to, I did lots of maths at university and I did a unit on control systems, and they kept using this term unit impulse and impulse response. And we did Fourier transforms, and we did Z transforms, and we did Laplace transforms. And this stuff is like magic. It's basically, if mathematicians are really mathemagicians, then these are like just they're your 3 standard spells you cast, and it just fixes stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh yeah, well, you just do this transform, and then it's easy. Moving between, and terms like phase as well. They just like I could use the language. I don't think I understood it at a deep level until I started learning more about digital audio and how stuff was implemented.
Yeah.
And I remember like reading some paper on impulse responses, just being as deep down the rabbit hole as you can and being like, hang on, I remember this stuff. And it was one of those like, oh yeah, I'm not practiced, but I could probably speak this language if I just had to do this for a year.
Mm-hmm.
I could probably get back on track with it. And yeah, there's just lots of stuff where you're just like, oh yeah, of course, that's how you do it. Like especially the fast Fourier transform it's like one of the most useful things human beings have ever invented. This is up there with Troy. This is up there with like
AFL,
Simpsons. Simpsons. It's the gunpowder, the wheel. It's really up there. Slings for babies.
Sliced bread,
the automatic bread slicer. It's a beautiful thing. So yeah, maths is fun stuff when you have something to apply it to.
Yeah.
But yeah, the UA stuff, that's pretty cool. I saw Sound Toys have Super Plate.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, so it's like
that's interesting.
Update, like
Can
a
you
really
tell me about
expanded version of Little Plate.
Oh, do you know what fucking pisses me off about Little Plate is that there's no pre-delay in that.
Well,
it's the
Troy,
thing that
maybe
stops me
Super
from
Plate
using
is for
it.
you.
Yeah, but how much does it cost?
Well, I'll let you know right now, mate. While I'm talking about that, Beyerdynamic gave the M series a facelift, so the M88, the M160. Yeah,
interesting.
I don't know what they've done, but I'm clicking on things. So Super Plate. Looking at the controls, you've got classic 140, you've got the 240, a couple of other modes in there. There's an output EQ, there's auto decay. Is there a pre-delay? Yeah, there's pre-delay, modulation, low and high filters. So it's a properly expanded version of Little Plate. And if you want to trade up from Little Plate, $59.
That's not too bad. Look, the thing is, I have so many reverbs that it's the last thing that the last time I got duped with a reverb was DDMF Magic Verb, yeah, which is a very good sounding reverb, but I thought it was going to change my life, and it is very good, but I also have so many other ones to go with. At the end of the day, Valhalla is pretty much all I need.
Valhalla's pretty darn great.
And because I was going to say, when you were talking about the UA stuff and the 224, because Arturia just released a 224 reverb as well.
Yeah, I saw that.
We just saw that. I was like, it's probably on sale for release, but I just don't I'm very unexcited about another plate reverb or another, digital reverb.
224.
Yeah, 2C4 recreation or something, because they're just in everything. It's hard. Well, look, not hurt them, but it's hard to think about how much better they could be right now than what they were 3 weeks ago. There's still algorithms in like deverb kind of that are useful. I still actually like the non-lin sound in deverb. I use that quite a bit. So
like Sean Costello cracked it, like when it comes to like the vintage reverb stuff is like,
yeah,
Sean knows what's up, and Valhalla stuff is and probably always will be like $50. So
just
I've watched some like lectures and just stuff with Sean, and I've been like, I'm going to give you my money. Like, you seem like an absolute champion dude. So
I bought Valhalla Room about 14 years ago. It was like maybe one of the first reverbs I bought, and $50 for a plugin really was tough to part. For any plugin was tough to part with, and I didn't immediately love it to the point when I didn't start messing around with it again till a couple of years ago. And then I was like, oh, there's actually some presets in this and some things about it that do the sound that I've been looking for in other reverbs, but I didn't realize that was what I needed to do. And it's just like, it's in my effects template that I've got a bunch of Valhallas that just do the thing. So
I remember doing a session for someone and like going to their studio, and they just wanted me to, I was literally there to play a guitar solo. And they said, like, what do you want? Do you want some delay or reverb? And I was like, yeah, just give me some delay or reverb, whatever. And they just put Valhalla Room on.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was the first time I'd ever heard a reverb plugin where I was like, whoa, what is this? It just sounded so good.
Yeah.
And I think that whatever preset they just loaded up ended up making it on there. It was pretty like, yep, there you go. Well, that sounds pretty good.
Let me just say, the Sound Toys one, so $59 for another plate, that's all well and good. I think the thing that is a bummer for me, and the reason I mentioned the pre-delay, it's like, it's one of the most useful knobs on a reverb, in my opinion. Like, it's as necessary as the decay.
100%.
Little plate is otherwise such a perfect, easy reverb where it's like, great, how much reverb do you want? This much. Done. But it's just like,
plate, man.
That is way more useful than another tweakable, like, fucking plate reverb. I really could care less about that. I just wish they put that one knob on there. Same as with fucking Devil Lock, which is an amazing saturation distortion. So, it's a mega compressor sort of thing. But I just wish there was an output control on it.
Which is always so loud.
Yeah, it's always so loud as soon as you chuck it on. But it sounds awesome. But then I've got to it's not one where you can be like, oh, I'm going to bypass now and see what it sounds like. It's going to be completely different. So, fuck you. Actually, one more Grumpy Troy thing.
Yep.
On my UAD Fatso plugin, there's no link for input and output controls, as far as I can tell. And same as on the Distressor one. Like, it would be so much easier to just have that level match thing. It's on so many other pieces of so many other compressors and stuff these days. I don't know why they didn't incorporate it, unless it's a hidden thing that I just haven't seen. It's possible.
Yeah, unless we are in fact the idiots. It's like, I did that Tone X review during the week. Man, IK, it's, what are you doing with your software? There's just a few things which are dumb and excusable if this stuff came out 20 years ago, but actually just pure, like it, that sometimes, and I kind of bring this up, and I kind of feel like that sometimes, as much as I love like the UA stuff, sometimes I feel like there is someone just sitting there laughing and cackling that they purposefully don't do this, because it's at the point where it's like, it's so obvious and it's so requested. The fact that it's not there can only be like pure malfeasance. That's the word for it. It's just like, there's just someone sitting there going, nah, we're not going to give you a pre-delay and little play. No, we're not going to give you cab lock high and low cuts because I don't want to do them. And the more you ask, the less we're going to do it. So
that's why there's no ADA MP1 in the Axe effects.
Yeah, I've complained about that plenty of times. I've not even complained. I just bring it up because I love how many people are like, oh, come on, Cliff. Mate, just there's things in there which sound so much better in there. I even went to the point where like I measured my ADA and I figured out this is what you do when you don't have a life, kids. I found like the maximum and minimum range, and like, you know, when you go to like -8 on the mids, what it actually is in dB. It's about -8.88 dB or something. So like I went through and figured out all the steps and looked at the schematic, and I even had someone on my Discord who's like a DSP engineer look at the schematic and tell me what I read wrong. And, you know, it's just a 4-band active EQ with like a high and a low shelf and, you know, a few and 2 peaking filters. Pretty easy. The center frequencies are there in the schematic. I measured them. They don't quite measure to what the schematic is, which makes sense because, you know, it's old stuff. And it's like, it's a fixed Marshall style tone stack. Yeah, I don't know, use the Atomica High. And it worked really, really well. It sounds like kind of close enough. It's just amp parametric EQ cab. And it sounds great.
Yep. It's actually interesting you bring some of that up because I was going to suggest that we have a little episode soon about amp EQ.
Yeah.
It might be something
awesome.
that
tone stacks
tone stacks. That makes sense that's how that works on the ADA as well. I kind of assumed that was the case, but that
sounds like we should do it with Jason Tong from Headfirst.
Yeah.
Kind of podcast.
I think that's something we should bring up with him when we have the opportunity, because I have some honest questions, and I think it's very overlooked in the guitar community how those things how they work. And also it's like one of those things, if you're a guitar player, this is a legitimate thing that happens a lot. If you're a guitar player and you decide to get into pro audio and you have the option of getting a solid state mic preamp in quotes or a tube mic preamp in quotes, which one do you think is the best one?
And which one do you think guitar players are immediately going to choose?
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like you can go and buy a $100 Behringer like valve in quotations preamp, and think it's going to be the warmest, juiciest, just like my Fender Deluxe Reverb thing, when in reality, like, most of the good shit is not a fucking valve preamp. I mean, those are definitely there. Like, good valve equipment is unreal, but it's not the thing that you think is on all your favorite albums. Like, It doesn't translate. And the same thing goes in reverse. Like, if you're an audio engineer and then you go to like the EQ settings on a Marshall amp and just try and like tweak the mids a little bit and tweak the treble, it's like, it's not what you think it is. It's not working the way I think it is.
I would compare it is, you know, I think I really got into cooking when Elspeth moved here. And one of the first, like, if you're going to get into cooking, you know, a pretty easy thing to start with, start by making different pasta sauces, because you'll learn stuff about how to cook, and there's like templates for how to cook them.
Put a bit of milk in there.
Hey, mate.
That's what I reckon.
You're looking at the king of put a bit of milk in there. I've been doing that a lot with, you know, like you do a steak and you do a pan sauce, but
everybody, Leon knows how to do a pan sauce. Let me tell you, I can't. But
it's not hard.
You want a pan sauce? Uncle Leon is the ticket.
Anyway, normally I just chuck a bit of cream, bit of garlic, bit of pepper. And Troy, the secret is Massel vegan chicken stock.
Okay.
I didn't even know it was vegan chicken stock. It's just not made from real chickens, apparently. But it's a really good stock powder. And you just put a little bit of that. You put a bit of the stock powder in there.
Yep.
And I felt like an absolute filth unit doing that. Like, but it just kind of makes everything really well. And then there's a video with Marco Pierre White where he like did these videos for a stock cube company, and he's just putting stock cubes on everything. And he keeps going, it's up to you. Use as much as you like. It doesn't matter. It's your, like, they're actually, even though those videos are about cooking, they're just lessons for life. Because, you know, here's a guy who's done it all as a chef. And, you know, the classic Marco meme is, you know, he made Gordon Ramsay cry, which speaks to a lot about the culture in kitchens, I guess. But, you know, now he's just out there having a fat time cooking steak for himself, rubbing a stock cube into it. Knorr, K-O-N-O-R-R. Look up those videos. They're like the best thing on how to do anything. Anyway, I really got into that, cooking pasta sauces. Then, like, I had a pasta sauce my mum cooked, which was just like chucking it together. And it just destroyed anything I'd tried, like I'd cooked myself to that point. And it made me realize, it's like,
you cried.
Yeah, you know, just because I cried big time when I tasted it because it was so damn good. It's one of those things where it's like, you know, just because you think you know what's going on, like you can't discount. Like to me, my mum cooking is just a person using a guitar amp, and they know their amp.
Yep.
And you know, like, yeah, she's not working in a commercial kitchen or anything, but like she just cooks amazing food.
Yeah, your mum's a great cook, and there's always food in that house too.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You know, I don't have like 30 years of cooking for like 5 people every single day, a couple of times a day. Like that's experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, that's the home cook is the guitar player, and the audio engineer is the Michelin chef, and they can both learn something from one another, I think.
Yeah. I will say veggie stock, I don't like veggie stock.
Like the stock powder, or buying it?
The stock powder. Like, I feel like that's one thing, just to close this off. Whenever because we do HelloFresh once in a while.
Oh, yeah.
And whenever there's veggie stock powder in something, I always taste it immediately. I'm always like, oh, it's got veggie stock powder in it. And that and fucking celery. I can't stand celery.
You don't like celery? Interesting.
No, I really don't. I taste that immediately as well, and it almost always puts me off something.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Celery's I can understand why it's a bit divisive. Have you tried Vegeta?
No.
We're really getting into it here. So
no, I'm just thinking about Final Flash, and
yeah. So it's spelt the same as Vegeta, but basically Vegeta is what all the Slavs use in their cooking, and my mum's used it forever. Just chuck a bit of Vegeta in it. I'm pretty sure it's a vegetable stock. They might make a chicken stock, which is funny based on the name. But we have some friends in Melbourne. And shout out to Vin, because Vin has a podcast, and I was telling him about this when we were in Melbourne last time. Hopefully he's listening to this, but Vin and Lil, and Vin's Italian and Lil is Croatian, and they invite us over every single time we're there and just like cook insane food, make coffee for us. We have the best time talking about like melodic rock from the 80s and all these obscure bands. And Cam pointed out that Vin kind of looks like Paul Stanley, so we just refer to him as Paul Stanley. And they're just like the best people. But Vin was making this chicken, and I was like, bro, what have you seasoned this chicken with? It's some of the best chicken I've ever eaten in my life. And he was like, mate, Vegeta. What else should I season it with? So yes, if you're from Southern Europe, basically, you know, you probably use a bit of Vegeta on there. So
what's a kakarot?
What's a kakarot? I feel like I read a while ago that's like, isn't that a Japanese word for something?
Is it?
Mate, we need to answer these questions about life. So anyway, Ibanez put out a bunch of guitars that look like, this is my NAMM rap. Yep. Ibanez put out a bunch of stuff that looks like all the other Ibanez stuff.
Yeah, don't care.
You know,
Digitech's back though. Is that true?
Digitech is back. Yeah, that's cool. Actually kind of cool. I think with like, they kind of got the band back together. So Tom Van Cram, it was
Ross Lyon going back to St Kilda.
Man,
he's getting the boys together.
Basically the same thing. And I've seen Tom's on the Gear page and on the Gear forum as well. So they were writing a lot about it. But that's kind of cool.
I didn't actually say, I know that it's happening, but what have they got product wise? Is stuff launched, or is it just we're back? Everybody,
I'm actually not 100% sure, but I think it's like all the stuff. Because see, I didn't realize this until a while ago. Like the Polara reverb and stuff like that. Because Harman owned Digitech, who owned Lexicon.
Yeah, it's all the same company.
So it was like they had a few pedals had Lexi chips in them.
Yeah.
So you want a sick reverb, just go and get one of these things.
I think I want to say Soundcraft as well is in that group, and JBL as well. Like it's all the same company.
There you go.
Same as
awesome.
Actually not the same as, but not that interesting of a side note. The effects in a Marshall AVT, I can tell you that they have an Alesis chip in them.
Really?
Yes.
Ah, that's kind of interesting.
I remember seeing that a long time ago when I had the AVT. Or at least the AVT 100 from the 2000s. Go on.
I want to say that Alesis chip may be just a very widely commercial DSP, because I'm pretty sure all the Earthquaker devices pedals use that same chip.
Oh, okay.
There's like...
It's old. It's 20-something years old.
Yeah. So there's the Alesis chip, and then I think there's the Shark and the Tiger Shark, and maybe one other thing. And it was a bit of a like meeting of the minds thing, where all these different companies actually got together and like spec'd out these things.
Because that Shark chip, so when this is about 2009, when the UAD2 came out, in that, 2008, 2009. I believe that all the UAD's Shark, isn't it? Does it sound right to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was a big deal. It was like, that was in all the advertising, is like using these Shark chips. I didn't really understand it too much at the time. I guess I probably don't understand it that much now. But what was the point of my story? I remember like reading articles that were like, basically once those original UAD cards, like, because they were cards at the time, had come out, all this Shark stuff was also incredibly obsolete in terms of its specs, like, because everything moves so quickly.
Yeah,
but
I know one of the head engineers, maybe the head engineer at Source Audio, worked for Kurzweil.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to remember their name. I feel like it's a Bob, and basically I don't know if they helped design these chips or they were a consultant for it, but it's a pretty interesting. There's like some interesting stuff around the whole like development of those chips, and the fact that you could fit them in pedal-sized enclosures as well. Like, kind of, that's why after that point in the early 2000s, suddenly you had digital pedals everywhere that were really, really good. So yeah, that's Bob Chidlaw.
Okay.
That is, he was from Kurzweil. So I've got a thing called the Kurzweil Rumor here, which is a reverb, really, really cool. They made something called the Rumor and the Mangler and the KSP-8, and the KSP-8 is basically like, it was Kurzweil's version of an Eventide H.
Yeah,
like,
there was a period,
powerful.
early Gear Space, if you were looking for like a hardware reverb, because I mean, we talk about digital reverbs for a minute there, like late 2000s, there was still accepted that there was no good reverb plugins. And so people are still saying, no, you've got to go and buy a Lexicon or a whatever. But that one came up a lot because it was comparatively affordable to like a bunch of Lexicon stuff or whatever. So yeah, I never used one, but I'm aware of that being a decent sounding unit.
So thanks to the magic of the World Wide Web,
World Wide
Web, sing that to maybe that could be our theme song to the tune of Wild Wild West. So check this out, mate. This is pretty interesting. Sigma DSP. This is the thing that I have been trying to find. So yeah, Sigma DSP. So Analog Devices, do they make the Shark and the Tiger Shark?
Oh, possibly. Yeah.
Yeah, mate. Here we go. Get this. So I'm going to do a very brief overview of this. I did want to talk about something else on today's podcast, but I think
we can do it. We can probably get there from this. I think.
Oh, there you go.
But keep going, mate. Just keep going. Just do you.
So this is going to tie into what we wanted to talk about. So in 2005, basically this chip came out that's smaller than a nickel or maybe a dime. I'm trying to look at it. It's like a tiny little thing. So basically, like up until the 90s, trying to get these DSPs really, really small wasn't happening. So Analog Devices Shark and Blackfin range, there was a new dedicated, basically audio DSP chip. Roger Smith and ex-Kurzweil engineer Bob Chidlaw were an integral part of the Sigma DSP chipset team. Roger saw the potential in putting their new streamlined, efficient, extremely high-quality Sigma DSP chips to work in guitar pedal, and with Bob's help, they went on to create Source Audio.
Well, there you go.
There you go. That's where Source Audio comes from, because they were kind of like an out of nowhere company. Those original the pedals were really interesting.
They were weird looking, because remember the multi-band distortion? Is that the one that we tried?
Sound blocks.
Yeah,
I think that's what it was called.
They didn't sound good. Like, they had a sound, but it was like, because they were plastic as well, that the enclosures were plastic. Yeah, they had a real cheap sort of like gimmicky vibe about them. Like the form factor was really strange. Which one have you got? It's not the distortion one, is it? The synth one or something like that?
No, it's the multi-band distortion one.
Oh, it is one. Because I had that on my baseboard for a little bit.
The something wave. I know they've got the ultra wave out now, which is in like a normal pedal, which is amazing. Such a good pedal. The opposite of UAD, you can deep dive on the editor with that one and do some there's multi-band compression, there's EQs, there's LFOs. It's so powerful. So some other, I'm quoting this from noisegate.com.au, by the way, which I believe They also have a YouTube channel. I believe they're connected to CMI here in Australia, who I do some work with, which is pretty cool. So Strymon and Meris have opted to use a 32-bit Shark range of chips. That makes sense. That fits. Here's the fun side note, mate. We're talking about Sean Costello from Valhalla DSP. Sean worked at Analog Devices and helped set up Universal Audio with the development tools to create UAD2 on Shark chips.
Well, there you go, mate.
There you go.
The moon is just the sun at night.
Yep. The Blackfin chip family is used by Empress and Electro Harmonics. So yeah, basically Analog Devices. So yeah, I think pretty much Analog Devices, were dominating that. I know the AXFX3 uses a Texas Instrument chipset, which I have seen, and to quote Cliff, is basically like, it's really hard to code for. There's with all of these chipsets, my understanding is that basically like there's dev kits for them. So, you don't have to be like across it. Well, you need to know how to do DSP engineering, but you kind of do it more or less in the box.
Yep.
And yeah, the Texas Instrument chips in the AXFX3 are like way more powerful than any of the Analog Devices stuff that's in pedals, but hard. So that's why the AXFX is like so overpowered compared to some of this stuff. And I guess the flip side is that you can just afford to, you want to run these super high quality algorithms, you just go for it in there. So yeah, which leads me to what I want to talk about, which is kind of a very brief overview of digital modeling.
Just pause for 1 second. Is there anything else from NAMM worthwhile talking about? Are we happy with that?
Oh, I'm pretty happy with that.
I'm happy with that. Yeah, NAMM done, dusted, in the box, in the books.
Did.
Well, Uncle Leon, this episode's been going on a little bit. We've got a lot more to talk about. So how about we break it up right here and we'll reconvene tomorrow morning. How does that sound to you, mate?
I think that sounds like the perfect way to end part 1 of this podcast. And tune in tomorrow for part 2.
Peace.